Welcome. My name's Timothy, and this is TM Aviation. On today's podcast, we cover pandemic flying. How is the pandemic from a pilot's point of view? Today, we're joined with Captain Eric Mosley. So, Captain, tell me about yourself.
Well, Timothy, first, let me just thank you for this opportunity to talk to your listeners in your podcast. I'm very impressed with everything that you've done with the Mile High Flight program.
Thank you.
And your life is without limits. So I look forward to seeing what your future holds. As far as my brief background, I am a retired captain from United Airlines. I retired just last October. I was an evaluator on the 777 aircraft, which is the large two-engine Boeing aircraft, the largest aircraft that United Airlines has. And I flew with United for 34 years. I'm very proud of being associated with such an outstanding carrier. Before I was with United Airlines, I was a military pilot for 10 years. And after I got hired by United in 1990, I continued to fly as a part-time Air Force aviator in the C-130 aircraft until I finished up my 20 years with the United States Air Force.
Perfect. And congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right. So, for the theme of this podcast, we're going to talk about how the pandemic affected pilots during that time. So, if you could recall, how did you hear about the pandemic?
Well, my wife and I were actually on a trip in Thailand, and when the pandemic first broke, that's where we first heard word of it. We really had no idea what was going to come of it. Global illnesses, as you well know, come and go, and we had no expectation that this would be much different. But as it was really starting to elevate and be recognized as a global menace, we were on our way back from Thailand, from Bangkok, Thailand, trying to get back into the States after a wonderful 10-day trip, visiting some of the sites and attractions in Southeast Asia. But we were able to get back on one of the last planes probably flying out of Asia. It was actually coming out of Narita, Japan, where we had just disembarked, having just gotten back from Bangkok to Tokyo, and then trying to get from Tokyo back to the United States. So we were very grateful as things started to escalate, and it became clear that this was something more serious. That we were able to get a couple of seats back to the United States before it really started to shut things down.
That's very interesting because I actually don't know a lot of people who were out of the country when the pandemic happened. So that's very interesting. So did you ever think your career would be at risk during that time?
Well, it certainly could have been. I think a lot of things we discover in hindsight, as it was happening, it seemed like it was something that would pass, at least we were hoping would pass fairly quickly. But now in retrospect, after the dust has settled, it was a global event that really threatened the livelihood of every airline. We had great leadership at the time, and in collaboration with our pilots union, ALPA, ALPA, Airline Pilots Association, United Airlines was able to develop a strategy that would allow us to survive. And, even though we certainly took some hits, just like every other major carrier, as we had to draw down on our schedules, we did much better than many of the airlines who took different approaches to how they would manage their business, the airplanes as well as the aircrew themselves. And so when it was all said and done and we started to emerge from the pandemic, United was uniquely and well-placed for a quick recovery.
That sounds good. So how long were you actually grounded for?
Well, I was never, thank goodness,
really?
completely grounded. the passenger side of the business obviously took a significant hit. We still continued to operate passenger flights, but at a significantly reduced rate. Um, I was at that time flying still the 777. Was fairly new to the aircraft, and because it's a very large aircraft with international capabilities, we continued to fly, but they transitioned most of our flights to strictly cargo operations, and so no passengers, just cargo. But that really did. Save us. I think we still would have survived, but it would have been even a greater struggle, I think, had we not transitioned a lot of our business from passenger flying to cargo flying, both domestically and internationally, which we were fortunately able to make enough of a profit that it kept our doors open and our airplanes flying.
Very interesting, because I remember from my uncle, for context, he works for Emirates as a one of their maintenance crews, and he remembers during the time where he didn't lose his job, but his job turned into just removing all the seats from many aircraft just so that you can fit more cargo into the aircraft.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. So.
what gave you hope during this time?
Well, having been a veteran of United Airlines for 34 years, I'd seen some pretty significant ups and some pretty alarming downs. Um, Specifically, 9/11, when the trade centers and the Pentagon were were crashed into by jets from United Airlines and from American Airlines. Uh, that was an existential event that came pretty close, as I understand, to uh, ruining United forever. We were, as I understand it, pretty close to shutting our doors for good. So I was a veteran of that experience, and so I'd learned that resilience is important, and also my Christian faith leads me to try and discover the positive even in a negative situation to keep a healthy, hopeful outlook on the future. And so I applied those same lessons and experiences to the pandemic, and fortunately, we came out of it okay.
You know what, that sounds really nice, because I remember even during that time, as someone that really wanted to be a pilot and still wants to be a pilot, um it was a moment where I was like, do I think this career will actually exist after it? Which thankfully it does. But during that time there was a lot of uncertainty, and I think your former experience with going through the ups and downs of the aviation industry really helped you during that time.
Indeed. I will add that it's a great time to be a pilot, uh, but those opportunities ebb and flow. Sometimes there are incredible opportunities, and the hiring is at historic levels. Sometimes there's little or no hiring at all, and you just have to stand by and wait an opportunity for the industry to turn around. That's certainly what happened after 9/11. It happened as well during the pandemic, but people love to travel, and more and more people are being born into the world, requiring greater and greater levels of airline service. And while there's a bit of a lull right at this moment, those trends, I have no doubt, will turn around, and the future looks definitely bright for the airline business in general, and the piloting profession specifically. So I would certainly recommend it. It's a long and challenging road, but it's definitely one that's worth every bit of effort that one might put into the challenge and the search for a career in the airlines at any major airline.
So to expand on what you just said, so first, when you were working, when did flying turn back to pre-pandemic levels? And also, what's one piece of advice that you would give to aspiring pilots right now?
Hmm. Well, that's an excellent question. And as I'd mentioned earlier, United Airline made a decision while most, if not all, the other major airlines were dramatically decreasing their capacity, both in equipment and in personnel. United Airlines decided to hold the line, so to speak, and keep most of its personnel either on the property. In other words, they didn't furlough them, or if they were furloughed, they kept them uh, close at hand with the expectation that when things turn around, uh, that we would be uniquely positioned to be the first out of the gate, so to speak, in terms of returning to normal levels. But to answer your question, it took a couple of years after the worst of the pandemic was over, I think, before we got to levels that were comparable to before pandemic levels. But again, United Airlines continued to position itself for what we believe would be a very vigorous recovery. We purchased and put orders in on a number of aircraft. As I said, we kept our staffing levels pretty constant. So when the turnaround did come, we were ready to jump right on those opportunities, whereas the other airlines were struggling to ramp up and make airplanes and aircrew available so they could take advantage of the revised uh, need for air travel.
Sounds good. So, so before we head out, what is one piece of advice that you would give to aspiring pilots right now?
Well, after 34 years with United and another 10 years with the Air Force before United, I can tell you that I've had just an amazing journey. I've traveled to to most of the world. There's a couple of places that I haven't yet been to. Antarctica would be one, but other than that, I've been to every single one of the other continents. Been to a lot of countries. Visited a lot of interesting places that people pay a lot of money for, and with the Air Force, a lot of places that people never knew existed. So I've had great experiences. If I was to give advice to the next generation of pilots, uh, I would just encourage them, if this is something that they truly have passion for, to follow those dreams. It is a challenging road. It is very competitive. As you can imagine, they're looking for the best, most highly qualified candidates, certainly to fly the airplanes and for every other aspect of the aviation industry as well. And so, you have to work very hard, prepare each step of the way so you can distinguish yourself. So when you do have that opportunity to come and visit us at United Airlines and interviewing for whatever job you might be interested in, you'll be as ready as you possibly can be. But it's a great profession, especially if you like traveling, especially if you like a career that requires uh, the highest levels of achievement, the highest levels of competence and qualification, the highest level of responsibility. If you can imagine being directly responsible for the lives of hundreds of passengers in sometimes very challenging circumstances, weather-wise or just a theater of operation. It's a huge responsibility, and I will add that they pay us quite nicely for that level of responsibility. So it's a great journey if you decide to embark on that path.
Thank you for your time, Captain.
All righty. Thanks a lot, Timothy, and good luck in the future. We look forward to seeing you at our next event, and I think you're going to enjoy it. And again, God bless, and look forward to seeing what your future holds for you.